Ntate Elias Monage, thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us. And I know that you are the Business Council member of BRICS responsible for energy and infrastructure. So what are the issues emerging from the working groups that have already deliberated?
No, thanks, Tim, and good morning. I think one of the things that emerge sharply in the two extremes, I'll start with energy, is around a clear policy position in terms of the energy mix. Energy mix in the sense that we need then to look at coal, we need then to look at gas, we need to look at nuclear, we need then to look at renewables, and we need then to look at hydro. So those are some of the issues that emerge within the energy committee of the BRICS. Part of the discussions, of course, it centered around the issues at hand in our country, where we have load shedding, blackouts, and various other things as a result of ESCOM not performing in terms of providing electricity on a sustainable basis, so that we can then industrialize the country. We can then talk about the recovery and the reconstruction post-COVID. So those are some of the broader issues, because in the absence of energy, it then becomes a constraint and a limitation for the recovery then to be realized. The critical part that Minister Mantashe alluded to is what is called the integrated resource plan, to say that plan basically, the intention is then to look at the entire energy mix in terms of looking at nuclear, looking at gas, and looking at the maintenance of our fleet, our coal power stations, because some of them, they were basically then being retired, so to speak, to give way to the renewables. And the critical aspect that the colleagues they've raised is that we cannot talk about just transition in the dark. So we need then to look at a better configuration and a better migration, so that you don't dish the old because of the new. You need basically to have a sustainability of the old fleet that you have, so that when you then migrate from the old to the new, you then have a sustainability and security of the energy in the country. So those are some of the issues that emerged. And I think in the next coming period, as a country, we're then looking at that integrated resource plan from government being distributed widely for public comment, so that we then look at a better configuration in our energy mix from a regulatory point of view.
Sure.
The other part, I think also, we need not to forget about the entire continent or the rest of the continent, because South Africa does not operate in isolation, in as much as we're part of BRICS, but we need then to look at the entire continent in terms of the willing agreements between South Africa and various other countries in terms of providing sustainable and secured energy within the continent. So these are some of the issues that basically then emerged within the committee.
And I will come back to some of those issues in as far as energy is concerned. On the infrastructure front, I mean, we've got relatively well-developed infrastructure, but there's room for improvement. And I wonder what your partners in BRICS are saying about that.
I mean, quite right. I mean, again, part of the infrastructure, it also then cut across even energy, because the extension of the transmission lines, that's part of the infrastructure that you need to provide energy. For the distribution to take place, you must generate and transmit. So those are some of the things that from the infrastructure point of view we are doing. The second part, on the infrastructure front, we're then looking at transport. Transport in the form of a rail system that is efficient and effective for the country, because we need then to have a proper passenger rail in which other countries, again, we are learning from them in terms of exchange information, because Transnet, they need then to play a vitally important role in the movement of goods from A to B on the way counts and the logistics. And I think we are also then drawing lessons from Brazil, China, and Russia and India, of course, in terms of both passenger and our rail system. That includes the ocean economy, so that again our ports, they need them to play a particular role in stimulating economic growth for the country and even for the continent, where we can then trade better and easier with other countries when we have the ocean that is properly configured, where we then have a proper transport system for both passenger and the locomotives and the wagons. So those are some of the issues.
Interestingly, I mean, in our case, as far as infrastructure is concerned, the logistics side of it in particular, we'll go back to energy in time. We've seen it being destroyed before our very eyes. So how are we going to upgrade that which is being destroyed anyway?
I think coming back to our issues in the country, we need then to look at the security of our infrastructure. Because if we don't secure it, then we're back to square one in terms of vandalism that is taking place. So we're then looking at a collaborative between government and private, so that we can then secure, and communities for that matter, to secure the infrastructure, the assets within the infrastructure, whether it can be the rail system, it can be both the power lines and other related aspects. So that's part of the security that we need then to provide as a country, both private and government. So the responsibility lies from both sides.
What do you think the priority, at least not only in the South African context, but within the BRICS deliberation context, is regarding infrastructure? In other words, which parts of the infrastructure did you agree to, or are you talking about dealing with almost immediately?
We have agreed on a number of things. We have agreed on exchanging data and information on the transport. That's the first thing. Transport in terms of the passenger rail. We need to have an efficient and effective rail system for South Africa and for the continent, so that we can then have a movement of people leveraging at the back of Africa Free Continental Agreement that we concluded. That's the first thing. The second thing is around the movement of goods, because we then need Transnet to provide wagons and the locomotives for the movement of products from A to B within the continent and even outside the continent. Because if again we then have the ports in terms of the logistics that will then allow the shipping to move from country to another country, it then also then provides the growth and the revival of the economy post-COVID. So those are some of the things that we've agreed upon in terms of forging ahead in dealing with them.
I find the comment about the ports interesting. I mean, the Durban port now is semi-privatized, I suppose, and the partners come from the Philippines and not from within BRICS. Is that an issue, or that's not a matter of interest to yourselves?
I guess we need to look at partnerships between private and public as part of the revival of the infrastructure, so that they can then inject capital and technology into our ports. And I think that would be an ideal thing then to do, so that it then allows private participation and inclusiveness, where you then bring various entities and organizations that historically they were marginalized and set aside. So those are some of the issues that we are thinking is a good thing to do.
The major concern is that of energy in South Africa. Everybody is concerned about it, whether it be manufacturing people or it be people in the commodities sector, minerals and so on, that they are not able to make progress because of our energy constraints in South Africa. Yet, your partners in BRICS do have solutions. Which way are you going? Are you inclined to go? And which ones do you think could work for South Africa, again, almost with immediate effect?
For us, it will be the question of looking at gas, looking at a nuclear in a different package. When I'm saying package, so that we then look at modular reactors, let's say for different municipalities. That then becomes a quick win in terms of reducing the levels of load shedding. The third part, again, will be around a proper and effective maintenance of our current fleet from the coal point of view, because if we then do that thing, it then becomes much easier to reduce a further levels of load shedding and blackouts. And these are some of the issues that we have debated and discussed with our colleagues from the BRICS countries in terms of holding hands and assisting each other in addressing the current problems on the energy side.
How long down the line do you think we'll see the benefits of these deliberations, at least in the working groups that you are having oversight of?
Today, for an example, we'll be having the AGM for the council, for the Global Council, to basically adopt the report. And part of the adoption of the report will then include addressing the recommendation timelines and in the review to say when are we going then to see the execution of those recommendations, so that we then move swiftly in terms of that process. And where I'm sitting, I'm seeing the implementation in the next coming 2 to 3 months, because post the consolidation of the report, we then hand the report to the heads of states as a council to say this is what we have done for this period, and we identify even short to medium issues for implementation. And therefore, upon the heads of states receiving the reports, we'll then see the implementation thereafter.
Elias Monage, thank you very much for talking to us.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Sure.